I was awakened from a fitful sleep shortly after 2 o'clock in the morning by a shrill, sibilant, faceless voice.
I couldn't make it out at first in the dark bedroom. And I said, "I'm sorry, you will have to talk a little louder." And the voice said to me, "I want you to tell the people the truth." Not an easy thing to do because the people don't want to know the truth. And I said, "You're kidding. What the hell should I know about the truth?" But the voice said to me, "Don't worry about the truth. I will put the words in your mouth." And I said, "What is this, the burning bush? For God's sake, I'm not Moses." And the voice said to me, "And I'm not God. What has that got to do with it?" And the voice said to me, "We're not talking about eternal truth or absolute truth or ultimate truth. We're talking about impermanent, transient human truth. I don't expect you people to be capable of truth, but God damn it, at least you're capable of self-preservation." And I said, "Why me?" And the voice said, "Because you're on television, dummy. You have 40 million Americans listening to you, and after this show you could have 50 million. For Pete's sake, I'm not asking you to walk the land in sackcloth and ashes preaching the Armageddon. You're on TV, man." So I thought about it for a moment. And then I said, "Okay."
Something is wrong in this country.
This is a world where good men are murdered. Men who try and help are murdered and cut down in their prime of their youth, and hacks and mediocres and becks just run everything else.
Shopping center there, everyone is running.
Firefighting equipment, I know.
No, none whatsoever.
Two-thirds of Americans say it's not worth fighting.
So?
Iraq is George Bush's Vietnam.
It isn't about a lie or a conspiracy or a deceit or a deception. It's a decision.
The government tells us everything we can do and can't do.
We have 1% of the world's population owning 40% of the planet's wealth. If that isn't a signpost to the intrinsic flaw of this system, that it's there to perpetuate one class over another, I'm not sure what is.
We have 30,000 scientists, 9,000 PhDs, who have signed up to debunk global warming.
Well, it's true for me. You see, I believe.
You mean true for you is different from true for anybody else? How can something be
absolutely,
true for you?
Because I can't.
Something's either got to be true or not.
I can't.
Our government knew they were going to fly into the building.
They either knew, they either participated, or the biggest buffoons that ever ran our country.
You having a global media enterprise, I mean, have you shaped that agenda at all in terms of perceptions of the war, in terms of how the war is viewed?
No, I didn't think so. I mean, we've tried.
Something is wrong.
Berries ready for two ghosts are no different than you. Ghosts are now waiting for you, are you? Sweet berries ready for two ghosts are no different than you. Ghosts are now waiting for you, are you? Dreaming, dreaming the night, dreaming alright. You're now waiting for you, are you? Sweet berries ready for two ghosts are no different than you. Ghosts are now waiting for you, are you? Dreaming, dreaming the night, dreaming alright.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
People are locked into a box. They see the box around them. They see the leaks and the holes and the cracks, and they go up to the cracks, and they try to fix them. They try to patch the holes, but they don't stop to think that maybe there's something wrong with the box itself. Maybe the integrity of the box that they exist in is inherently invalid. It's inherently void. The economic system that we live in is a parasitic paradigm that is only going to lead to self-destruction. We live in a very fucked up, sick culture. We really do. Society is mentally ill. To be normal is to be messed up. But people don't see that.
People are depressed, right. and rightly so, because we have a failed policy, and Americans, God bless them, are over there volunteering to have gone, to have joined the Army, are over there giving their lives, nearly to the number of 3,000 Americans so far. So yes, people are depressed, but it's not because they want to watch Dancing with the Stars.
No, but they don't want to hear about the bad world that we live in.
The people don't want to know the truth. I know the truth. I know the truth. I know the truth. I know the truth.
People just want to make money. Caring is for suckers.
Bobby is too young to know that, Hank.
They just had a stupid shit sale. They're going to buy more. They're going to go out in the parking lot and stuff this stuff into the big, fat, ugly, oversized SUV that's got plenty of room in it. Plenty of room in it for stupid shit and lots of room left over for these big, fat, ugly motherfuckers to get them home. Stopping, of course, for jelly roll and fried dough. These people are efficient, professional, compulsive consumers. It's their civic duty, consumption. It's the new national pastime. Fuck baseball. It's consumption. The only true, lasting American value that's left, buying things. Buying things. People spending money they don't have on things they don't need. Money they don't have on things they don't need. So they can max out their credit cards and spend the rest of their lives paying 18% interest on something that costs $12.50. And they didn't like it when they got it home anyway. Not too bright, folks. Not too fucking bright. But if you talk to one of them about this, if you isolate one of them, you sit them down rationally, you talk to them about the low IQs and the dumb behavior and the bad decisions, right away they start talking about education. That's the big answer to everything. Education. They say we need more money for education. We need more books, more teachers, more classrooms, more schools. We need more testing for the kids. You say to them, well, you know, we've tried all of that, and the kids still can't pass the test. They say, don't you worry about that. We're going to lower the passing grades. And that's what they do in a lot of these schools now. They lower the passing grades so more kids can pass. More kids pass, the school looks good, everybody's happy, the IQ of the country slips another 2 or 3 points, and pretty soon all you'll need to get into college is a fucking pencil. Got a pencil? Get the fuck in there. It's physics. Then everyone wonders why 17 other countries graduate more scientists than we do. Education. Politicians know that word. They use it on you. Politicians have traditionally hidden behind 3 things: the flag, the Bible, and children. No child left behind. No child left behind. Oh, really? Well, it wasn't long ago you were talking about giving kids a head start. Head start, left behind. Someone's losing fucking ground here. But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place.
We have to, one, get a philosophical disposition under our belts that says, you know what, we're all on the same page. We all have to survive on this planet. We are faced with some tremendous problems, and the only way they're going to be resolved is to begin to work together. Everyone needs to shed their religious ideas. They need to shed their capitalist, socialist, fascist, communist pre-constructs. They need to shed everything that they have been taught and ask themselves one simple question: what the fuck do we need to continue our survival on this planet without horrors and wars and continuing the patterns and all the things that continue to happen?
Time has come to air the voice of reason. In a world gone mad, adrift on banal seas, for all who feel that lies have had their season, and whose hearts cry out instead for honesty, for all the weary souls grown bored with dreaming, whose thirst for beauty and for knowledge goes unslaked, for all who want to wake from what is dreaming, to know what's real and what is real to embrace. For all who've watched with mounting horror, evil's reign upon this world grow ever clear. For all who've prayed in vain, emancipators, wielding swords of truth and laughing without fear.
But we've got to come to some new ideas about life, okay? I'm not being facetious about abortion. It might be a real issue, it might not. It doesn't really matter to me, because what matters is, if you really believe in the sanctity of life, then you believe it for people of all ages. That's what I hate about this fucking child worship syndrome going on around there. Take the children. Take the children. How many children were in the wake of the children? Hey, what does that mean? They reach a certain age, they're off your fucking love list? Fuck your children if that's the way you feel, and fuck you with them. You either love people in general from all ages, or you shut the fuck up. Bill, what kind of philosophy is this, Bill? I don't know yet. I'm chasing this philosophy like a hound. I don't know where it's heading. Trying to tree it, you know. Who are you? Tell me what you damn kids know. Who are you? I'm me. It's true. Shut the fuck up. Quit thinking you're gonna fucking make the world better by bringing more little fucking cabbages to the planet. Why don't you try loving the people that are already fucking here, okay? Instead of living for a future that never fucking comes. It doesn't exist. It ain't coming. There is no future.
Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, and he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. Some doofus jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. And I'm telling you, be prepared for a major attack. But it won't be Osama bin Laden. It will be those behind the New World Order. I wonder what Osama bin Laden's targets are supposed to be. And if they don't, if this doesn't materialize in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it will eventually materialize because they haven't succeeded in getting the guns out of the hands of the American people, nor have they succeeded in taking our freedoms away. And so I can tell you with a certainty, they must do something terrible in order to stop this backlash and regain the sympathy of the mass herds of sheeple.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief.
at this early stage. We believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
Jim, just a few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
All right, Pat, we are just currently getting a look at the World Trade Center. We have something that has happened here at the World Trade Center.
We have a very tragic alert for you right now. An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center here at the lower tip of Manhattan.
This is a live picture from our camera on the Empire State Building looking toward the World Trade Center. A 3-alarm fire and a report of an explosion.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers.
Breaking news to report. You're looking at a live picture of the World Trade Center where we have just received word that a plane apparently has crashed into the tower.
There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit the World Trade Center.
There was a huge explosion sound. Everyone came out. A large section of the building is blown out, around like the 80th floor.
Was it hit by something, or was it something inside?
It was inside.
A plane has allegedly crashed into the World Trade Center.
I heard an enormous explosion, then I heard another enormous explosion.
I don't know which tower it is, but it hit directly in the middle of one of the World Trade Center towers.
I was taking the garbage out of the building when we heard this roaring engines coming. We looked up and there was a plane. Next thing you know, we heard boom. We ran up to the corner and hit right into the World Trade Center.
Fight it from it. If you're taking a look now, you can see that we've just had another explosion.
Perhaps purposefully into, oh my goodness, oh God, there's another one.
we heard the explosion. Actually, our power had gone off, and then we felt a tremor. We had just gotten up, and the next thing I know, it sounded like a missile came across our house. I mean, they were going that fast. It was flying. It was coming from that direction. I have no idea what it was.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Because a vision softly creeping.
There was definitely a blue logo. It was like a circular logo on the front of the plane, definitely towards the front. It definitely did not look like a commercial plane.
The plane wasn't no airline or anything. It was a twin-engine, big gray plane.
When I first saw the appendage on Flight 175, this extra piece of equipment, I was looking at the Evan Fairbanks footage, which is kind of bluish, and it's from the underneath. It's off-centered on the fuselage. It's between the engines. It casts its own shadow. It has its own reflection. And when I saw this, I thought somebody's had to have photoshopped this, and I wanted to get other sources to make sure that it wasn't just a product of Photoshop. It was in all the CNN footage when you took their videos and did freeze frames. It was definitely a three-dimensional piece of equipment. It definitely has nothing to do with Photoshop, and it shouldn't be there.
Anybody can see the other piece of equipment right there in the center line on the starboard side of that fuselage. It can't be anything other than an external piece of equipment.
Looking for more video evidence, right at ground zero, Deb Simon and I went down to New York City one day and buying all the pictures from street vendors we could find, we found a picture which I believe is Rob Howard's photograph, but it was a 35mm print. And I was tickled because you could clearly see, the appendage on the bottom. This is not normal for an aircraft. This is not normal for what we should be seeing on Flight 175.
All the recorded sources, all the different photographic evidence that was produced by CNN and ABC, they all show this pod. It's there. You can see it with your own eyes. And in my professional opinion, that there was a pod attached to the bottom of that aircraft, and therefore it was not United Airlines Flight 175.
I've never seen the pictures that it's shown the things attached to the bottom of the plane. So if it's a commercial airliner, I don't understand why they would have anything attached to the bottom of the plane. That doesn't seem to make any sense.
One of the things that jumped out at me when I looked at the footage or the video of Flight 175 as it went into the World Trade Center is it appeared to me that there was something on the under fuselage of that aircraft that did not belong there, at least not with a commercial airliner. Now, I'll tell you where I have seen attachments that look like that on military aircraft. So the question you have to answer now is, was that the commercial airliner that hit the World Trade Center, or possibly was it an aircraft that looked very similar but was a military type airplane?
After compiling a lot of the photographs and a lot of video regarding Flight 175, and there's some CNN footage that shows the whole side of the plane lighting up. And just as the aircraft is penetrating the World Trade Center, there's this bright anomalous event. It's like an orange flash, off to the right of the fuselage.
The bottom of that aircraft was exposed so that there was a large flash just prior to impact with the building. There was a large flash, so large that it lit up the side of the fuselage of that aircraft. It wasn't just a small spark.
There's been some discussion of just exactly what produced this flash. Some of the scenarios have been talked about have been reflection or sparks or static discharge or possibly an incendiary attached to the aircraft. This flash is produced in the shadow of the wing, so I don't think it could have been a reflection. As far as the possibility of sparks during penetration, the radome of the aircraft is a composite material. It's not metal per se. The wings are metal. They didn't produce sparks as they penetrated. So I don't believe they were sparks. As far as the static discharge, the 767, all aircraft have attached to the airframe what's called static wicks that are there to dissipate any static charges that could be produced on an aircraft in flight. In all my years of flying, the only time an aircraft has been statically charged is when you're flying for extended periods in precipitation. September the 11th was a perfectly clear early fall day without any clouds in the sky, so I don't think these aircraft would have been statically charged by precipitation. And the other item, or possible explanation, would have been an incendiary. And I do believe that this is what the source of the flash was. This flash is produced right in line where the pod was attached. Look at the footage in very slow motion. You can step through the footage with your pause still button on a DVD, and as this aircraft penetrates, you see the enlarged torn area facade where this pod was attached. All this evidence indicates to me that it was not a reflection or sparks or static discharge, but I think it was an incendiary that was associated with the pod that was attached.
Well, the pod could have been a number of things. It could have been even a missile attached. It could have been some kind of explosive attached. But whatever it was, it didn't belong there on a commercial flight.
This is a rocket pod. We primarily use these to shoot 2.75-inch unguided rockets. On the A-10, the primary role that we use these rockets for is forward air control. We shoot white phosphorus rockets that contain a phosphorus spotting charge. A very brilliant white cloud of smoke comes up when the rocket hits.
American Flight 11 was the flight that hit the North Tower, the first tower that was hit. And as far as we know, it was recorded by just one source, and that was the Nade brothers, who were producing a documentary video about New York firefighters. They happened to be in a position to catch American Flight 11 as it overflew New York City and flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Again, as you look at this footage, slow it down just a little bit, you can see this a big flash. This is before this airplane even hits the North Tower, and I would say quite probably that it was also an incendiary that caused that flash.
Pods under the plane suggesting they might be some sort of military plane, and flashes suggesting that they might be igniting large fireballs for spectacular television effect. Personally, I'm not convinced that that's true, but I'm also I'm not convinced that we need to dismiss that hypothesis. I've looked at these images, and some of the pod images, I think, they don't look to me like just optical illusions, like the people who debunked this claim.
Did the pod have anything to do with the flash? I can't answer it, but I can say this. The pod you will not find, or an external piece of equipment that large, you will not find on the belly or attached anywhere on the external part of a Part 121 scheduled airliner in the United States. It just won't happen. All that does is tell me that airplane was not the airplane that the government said it was.
I have looked at the films of the plane hitting the South Tower, and I have seen the slowed down version, and it is obvious to me that on more than 2 or 3 of these films there is a flash of some sort that takes place just as these planes are about to smack into the buildings. I cannot tell you what that is, but I can tell you what it's not. It's not a box cutter.
Indeed, the flash couldn't have been the result of a box cutter. So if the flash was the result of an incendiary device, how does that fit into a terrorist hijacking scenario at all? And if, as Colonel Nelson has proposed, there was extra equipment attached to the belly of the plane that hit the South Tower, how could that have been United Airlines Flight 175 or any other commercial airliner for that matter? Keep in mind that these planes disappeared for nearly a half an hour, surely enough time to substitute a drone in place of commercial aircraft, as was proposed in the 1962 Northwoods document.
One of the scenarios in Operation Northwoods was to take a regularly scheduled commercial airliner and take a similar type plane, paint the tail numbers up to resemble that of the commercial airliner, fly it by remote control out over the Caribbean, and by remote control blow it up after sending a tape recorded message saying, "Help, we're being attacked by Cuban MiGs." This was in 1962. I think we had a very sophisticated, more modern version of that plan happen on September the 11th, 2001.
Here, close to the 2 towers, there was another large tower, which was hit by the debris from the tower that collapsed.
This building, this huge, it was this 47-story building, was never hit by a jet. And yet it came down that same day, but 7 hours after the last tower fell, 7 hours later.
The collapse of the North Tower inflicts some damage to Building 7, causing fires to ignite on a few floors. Even the official version admits that fire has a low probability of causing the collapse. But why does total collapse take place? And why does it occur at free-fall speed?
World Trade 7, functioning as the command center for the complex, housed giant diesel backup and oxygen systems, the mayor's protected emergency bunker, and offices for the CIA, Secret Service, Department of Defense, and Securities and Exchange Commission. Its other tenants were insurance companies, brokerages, and banks. No plane hit Building 7, but at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th, it collapsed in a heap on the ground. Some damage to Building 7 is said to have been caused by debris from Tower 1. Though this New York Times article tells us Building 7 burned like a giant torch, the only visuals that exist are of unidentified smoke and a few small fires. Compare this to the wallops sustained by World Trade Center 3, 4, 5, and 6. Positioned right below the towers, damage to the surrounding World Trade Center buildings was infinitely worse. Still, the structures held up. But somehow, rescue workers knew that Building 7 would fall.
You hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down soon.
They said, hey, you got to stay behind this line because they're thinking about taking this building down. They're not sure if it's stable or not. So they were holding a line off because they had knowledge that something was going to happen.
Get out of here. All right? Go.
In this live BBC footage from September 11th, reporter Jane Stanley announces the collapse of Building 7 while it is still intact in the window behind her. How did BBC know this in advance of the event?
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed.
I would say 50 to 60% of Americans today don't even know that a third building went down. They have no idea that this third building went down at 5:20 in the afternoon, went down in 7 seconds flat, and wasn't struck by any airplane.
Right.
Well, when they, in their own document from NIST, that's the people that did the report, took 8 years or whatever, or 7 to get this out, they used the term free fall. That the building, it's in their words, in the document, you'll see it went into a free fall. Well, I got news for you. I used to blow things up for a living. And there's also something called physics, the law of gravity, which you might not like it, but you can't deny it. Free fall can only happen when all resistance is removed, because a moving object that runs into one not moving is going to slow down. That's the law of physics. When they say it went into total free fall, means there was no slowdown, which means there's only one way to remove the resistance. The buildings were demoed.
Here is Larry Silverstein, the owner, who took out $7 billion of insurance on the two towers, and he's also now bought the Sears Tower and taken out a bunch of insurance. And Governor Pataki just called him the lowest of the low in the newspaper because he's holding out for $1 billion more now. Interesting fellow, made out quite well, and here is his statement from America Rebuilds.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it, pull it, pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
It was 47 stories tall, what would have been the tallest building in 33 of our states. It was not hit by an airplane. Let's take a look at the evidence of World Trade Center 7 and see how it stacks up against the typical features of a controlled demolition, starting with, is there a sudden onset of destruction? Let's listen to this emergency word.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and you know, we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was well, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and you know, it was horrifying. And then you know, about a second later, the bottom floor caves out. And the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.
Do we have a straight-down symmetrical collapse into the building's footprint? Let's listen to Dan Rather narrate this collapse for us as we take our first look at the collapse of Building 7.
Now we go to videotape the collapse of this building.
It's amazing. Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Let's take a look in this side-by-side comparison with a known controlled demolition on the right. Did the building fall into its own footprint? Pretty much so. Do we have demolition waves? And how do these remove the column support? Well, here's a floor plan of Building 7. Now, to bring a building smoothly, symmetrically into its own footprint without falling over, what we have to do is remove the core columns, because what we want to do is bring the outside of the building in on itself. Now, this involves a high degree of precision that fire is not capable of. Do we have a free fall speed of collapse through the path of greatest resistance? You can see second by second the building gaining downward momentum. You can plot the drop distance on a graph of time, and it fits the free fall curve almost perfectly. What does this mean? That the columns had to have been removed, and removed virtually simultaneously on each floor, synchronistically timed, so the building had no resistance virtually on the way down. Do we have a total dismemberment of the steel structure? We had a 47-story skyscraper compressed to 4 stories. Do we have sounds of explosions, though? How about Kevin McPadden?
This was a boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
Do we have enormous clouds of pyroclastic smoke from the pulverized concrete? Watch the concrete entrained in the air racing down every street in each direction at 35 miles an hour. Do we have pools of molten iron? Here is Building 7 at A and B, and here is the North Tower and the South Tower. These hot spots are 1340 to 1370 degrees. These are the temperatures of the hottest office fires. There was no fire on the surface of ground zero after the collapses. What are we measuring here? We're measuring the molten metal that was seen by these first responders. Let's listen to John Gross, lead engineer of NIST, tell us about the molten metal from his perspective.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, and no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah, like lava.
Like lava
from a volcano.
No eyewitness who said so.
There actually melted beams where it was molten steel that was being dug out.
No eyewitness who said so.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of a wall.
Nobody who's produced it.
What is the problem here? Somebody's lying. I'm going to leave it up to you to make your own conclusions. How about chemical evidence, though? What produced all this molten metal? And what is thermite anyway?
Thermite. An incendiary used by the military, thermite is a compound of iron oxide and aluminum, which when ignited sustains an extreme heat reaction, creating molten iron. In just 2 seconds, thermite can reach temperatures over 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, quite enough to liquefy steel.
Dr. Stephen Jones performed chemical analysis on the previously molten metal. Dr. Jones received no less than 4 separate samples of World Trade Center dust, some of it from Jeanette McKinley's apartment across the street, where the windows blew in and filled her apartment with dust. Another sample was found like 10 minutes later on the Brooklyn Bridge. Well, he takes this and he puts a magnet over it, and he finds that there are small particles that come up to the magnet. Some of them are angular, some of them are round. They look like this. If you had thousands of cutter charges going off in the columns and beams throughout the building, and they were under this incredible pressure, what you'd see is something like this. Tens of thousands or millions of tiny droplets. What's the shape of those droplets? When a liquid is dispersed like this, its surface tension forms itself into almost a perfect sphere. Would there possibly be any unignited thermite pieces in the World Trade Center dust? Indeed, he finds it. It also comes up to the magnet from his dust samples. Many chips. This one, 1/16 of an inch long, red on one side, gray on the other. The red side is composed of tiny iron oxide particles and aluminum. The Lawrence Livermore lab came out with papers about this stuff. The particles being so small allow for almost instantaneous ignition between the two chemicals, the aluminum and the iron oxide, producing very explosive results. He continues his study and finds additional chips that are partially ignited, with spheres embedded in them. With Dr. Jones and his small team of scientists, through EDS, XRF, and WDS, identifies the components of these spheres and chips, predominantly iron, along with aluminum, oxygen, silicon, 1,3-diphenylpropane. The results, coupled with the visual evidence, he says, at the scene, such as the flowing hot liquid metal, providing compelling evidence that thermite reaction compounds were deliberately placed in both World Trade Center towers and Building 7.
Zie je vanaf boven gaan? Nee, je gaat vanaf onder.
Die gaat vanaf onder, ja.
Toch?
Ja.
Ze hebben gewoon kolommen weggeblazen. Er is nagesprongen.
Dit valt anders dan het World Trade Center.
Vind je niet dan?
Ja, je ziet het, de onderste verdiepingen gaan eerst.
Ja, en de rest zakt er gewoon in. Dus dit is controlled demolition.
Zeker weten?
Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Dat heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Maar dit is ook op 11 september gebeurd.
Dezelfde dag?
Dezelfde dag.
Dezelfde dag? Weet je dat zeker?
Ja.
Was het zeker weten de 11e? Dat kan geen waar zijn.
7 uur nadat de World Trade Center naar beneden viel.
Ja? Hebben ze hard gewerkt.
We have been told by the very people who designed and built these towers that they should have resisted the impact of more than one airplane. We have to ask ourselves, did the engineers and architects imagine that airplanes could crash into the towers without any fuel? Perhaps they thought that the airplanes could get there by just blowing in the breeze.
Never before or after 9/11 have steel frame towers collapsed due to fire.
In 2005, there was a fearsome conflagration in Madrid. A skyscraper went up in flames. It was a huge torch that kept burning for 20 hours. 20 consecutive hours. But in the end, the load-bearing structure remained intact. The skyscraper did not fall down. As you can see, the building is enveloped in flames. This skyscraper was not yet complete. It was still under construction. Nevertheless, it remained standing. Something you should note is the white color of the flames. This means that there is a lot of oxygen burning. If you look at the flames coming from the two towers in New York, we can see instead that the flames are dark red and the smoke is black.
the fires that were burning in these towers was a dark gray, a heavy, almost black gray smoke coming off. This implies an oxygen-starved fire.
Nevertheless, 55 minutes later, the whole tower collapses. According to the official NIST version of events, at a certain point, the steel structure of the towers gave way. It no longer had the structural strength that it had at the beginning. And all of this was supposed to be because of the immense heat. And here is something difficult to explain. We know that at some point certain people managed to walk down from the top of this tower and cross the point where the fire was strongest. Somehow they reached the bottom of the tower. How did they manage to do that?
I don't know. When I looked down there, I didn't see flames. I just sensed that it was the right thing to go and try and test it. We would go as far as we could until we were stopped by flames. And when we came to the 78th floor, the last layer was standing, but it was cracked. And there were flames licking up the other side of the wall like this. It wasn't a roaring inferno. I sensed that the flames were maybe starved for oxygen right there, you know, in the interior. We kept going, and we got onto the 74th floor. When we got down that far, normal conditions. The lights were on, fresh air coming up from below.
So the temperature inside the building was not particularly high, as we can see from the presence of this woman who is standing at the precise point where the plane impacted.